you that the biggest threat to Kaziranga may not actually be inside the Kaziranga. Imagine this. It's the monsoon season, the Brahmaputra is rising, water starts covering large parts of the grasslands. A rhino moves towards higher ground, an elephant starts moving, a deer moves, and a tiger moves. And eventually they reach the edge of the Kaziranga. But here's the problem. The boundary on the map says that the national park ends here. The animal doesn't know that. For the animal, the ecosystem continues. For the law, however, there is a boundary. And now Assam wants to formally establish an eco-sensitive zone of around 1 kilometer around the Kaziranga, instead of existing 10-kilometer default protection that applies until a site-specific ESZ is notified. The state says that it's about following the Supreme Court framework and allowing development in surrounding towns. Conservers fear it would weaken protection around critical wildlife landscapes. But I think both sides are missing something. The real question is not 10 kilometers versus 1 kilometer, but the actual question is what happened to the landscape between the park and the people? Because if we get that landscape wrong, we can have a perfectly protected national park and still lose the ecosystem. Hello everyone and welcome to Prosper India. I'm your host and news analyst Nishtha. Let's clear up the biggest misconception. Kaziranga's ESZ has not simply been officially reduced from 10 kilometers to 1 kilometer overnight. As of August 2026, Assam has announced that it plans to send a proposal to the centre seeking a site-specific ESZ of around 1 kilometer. The existing 10-kilometer arrangement continues as an interim or default protection until the revised site-specific ESZ is formally notified. And that distinction matters because the 10-kilometer figure is often presented as if it were a permanent universal boundary around every protected area. But the legal framework is more complicated. The Supreme Court has dealt with ESZs through a series of orders, and the basic principle is that protected areas need an ecological buffer, while the exact boundary can be determined based on the characteristics of the particular landscape. So the argument is not simply government wants to remove protection, the government is arguing that Kaziranga needs a site-specific boundary rather than a blanket 10-kilometer rule. But now comes the difficult question. What should a site-specific boundary actually be based on? Kaziranga is not just another national park. It is one of the India's most important wildlife landscape. The Assam government owns data shows that Kaziranga rhino population has risen to 2,413 in 2018, while India government has said that more than 70% of the world's greater one-horned rhino population is found in the greater Kaziranga landscape. And the Kaziranga is also a tiger reserve. The National Tiger Conservation Authority lists that Kaziranga Tiger Reserve at 1,173.58 square kilometers, including its core and buffer areas. So when we talk about protecting Kaziranga, we aren't talking about protecting one species. We are talking about an entire ecological system. Rhinos, tigers, elephants, wild buffaloes, deers, birds, wetlands, grasslands, and forests and rivers. But there is something even more important. Kaziranga is a floodplain ecosystem, and that changes everything. Most people see floods as a disaster. In Kaziranga, flooding is more complicated. Seasonal flooding is part of the ecosystem. It replenishes nutrients, it reshapes grasslands, and it creates and renews wetlands. But during surf floods, animals need somewhere to go. And this is where the surrounding landscape becomes critical. Animals may move towards higher ground in the Karbi and Long Hills and adjoining landscapes. This movement is not luxury. For some animals, it can be a survival mechanism. And here's the key insight to it. The park boundary protects habitat, the surrounding landscape protects movement, and you need both. Think of Kaziranga as a human city during a flood. Imagine building a huge emergency shelter but blocking every road leading to it. The shelter exists, but people can't reach it. That's essentially that can happen to wildlife if we protect the core but destroy the corridors. And now we get to the concept that is rarely discussed in the mainstream debates, edge effect. A forest doesn't suddenly become unaffected just because a legal boundary ends. The moment you start building roads, resorts, factories, settlements, or other infrastructure around a protected area, the ecological conditions at the edge begin to change. More lights, more noise, more vehicles, more people, more domestic animals, and more waste. More artificial structures, more disturbances. And gradually, the edge becomes a less suitable for wildlife. The danger isn't necessarily one giant project, it's cumulative development. One hotel may be manageable, one road can also be manageable, one warehouse or one residential colony can also be manageable. But add 50 of them over 15 years, and suddenly the landscape has changed completely. This is why simply asking that is the development inside or outside ES sets may be a wrong question. But what we should ask is what is the cumulative ecological impact of everything being built around the Kaziranga? This is a much harder question, but it is the question that actually matters. Now, let's be fair. Imagine living in a town near Kaziranga. You need a hospital, a school, a road, a drainage system, housing, business, tourism infrastructure, job. And then you are told that 10-kilometer environmental zone surrounds the national park. Naturally, people will ask, what happens to our development? This is one reason the Assam government is pushing for site-specific ES set. The Chief Minister of Assam has officially pointed to the impact of broad 7-kilometer zone on towns and development projects, including places such as Bhukat and Kalipur. And this brings us to an uncomfortable truth. Conservation cannot succeed by treating local people as the enemy. If people living around a protected area feel that conservation only means restrictions, eventually conservation will lose public support. A successful conservation model has to make local communities feel forest is valuable to me too. Here's more unusual perspective. Kaziranga has been extremely successful at protecting rhinos. Assam rhino population has grown dramatically over the decades, and the government says that the state's rhino crossed over 4,000 in 2024. This sounds like pure success, and it does, but successful conservation creates a new challenge. More animals need to be more functional habitat. If the population increases but the available landscape doesn't expand or remain connected, pressure can build. This is sometimes called a conservation paradox. You successfully save the animal, but then the animal needs more space. So conservation can stop at increase the rhino population. The next question has to be where will these rhinos live 20 years from now? And this is why landscape level conservation is so important. And this is where the story gets interesting. The government isn't doing only one thing. There are already multiple measures designed to reduce the conflict between the infrastructure and the wildlife. Kalipur Numaligarh Highway projects includes a roughly 35-kilometer elevated wildlife corridor designed to allow animals to move through the landscape while traffic passes above. The larger project is worth more than 6,950 crore rupees. Second, animal detection technology. Kaziranga has deployed animal sensor systems and camera based monitoring around the roads. The National Tiger Conservation Authority has documented the use of CCTV, thermal imaging, automatic number plate recognition, and speed monitoring to detect animal and vehicle movement and enforce speed limits. The Assam government has previously ordered the closure of 28 stone quarries and 18 stone crushers near Kaziranga and terminated mining permits in certain areas following court directions. Fourth, the habitat expansion. The Government of India has highlighted expansion of rhino habitat, including more than 200 square kilometers added to Orang National Park, the reclamation of 12.82 square kilometers in Laukawala Burachapuri Wildlife Sanctuary. So the government strategy isn't simply build more. There is also parallel effort to make infrastructure more wildlife compatible, and that gives us a clue about what should happen with the ES set. So here is my proposal. Instead of arguing endlessly about 10 kilometers versus 1 kilometer, India should experiment with something like a dynamic ecological protection zone. Here is how it should work. First, map animal movement. Use GPS collar, camera traps, drone surveys, and long-term wildlife data. Don't suggest where animals move, measure it. Kaziranga already has extensive camera trap and monitoring system. For example, NTCA reports more than 600 camera traps being used annually in Kaziranga related monitoring, while in 2024 monitoring identifying 148 adult tigers in the surveyed landscape. Second, map flood escape routes. Create a detailed map showing where animals move during the extreme floods. Those areas should receive a protection even if they are 1 kilometer, 5 kilometer, or 10 kilometer from the park. The distance shouldn't determine the importance, ecological function should. Third, create different levels of protection. Instead of one chain circle, We should create a red zone for critical wildlife corridor, almost no high impact development, orange zone, ecological sensitive landscape, strict regulation and environmental conditions, yellow zone for existing settlements, development allowed but with strong environmental standards, green development zone, lower ecological sensitivity, concentrate infrastructure here. Now, you aren't stopping development, you are moving development to the right places. Step 4. Introduce a wildlife impact score for a major project. Before approving a hotel, road, or industry or township, ask, does it block an animal corridor? Does it increase nighttime light? Does it increase traffic? Does it affect wetlands? Does it increase groundwater extension? Or does it increase human wildlife conflict? Or does it contribute to cumulative habitat fragmentation? Give every project a score and make that score public. This creates something conservation policy often lacks: transparency. Step 5. Make developers pay for ecological infrastructure. If a major project creates additional ecological pressure, the developer should contribute to wildlife crossings, habitat restoration, anti-poaching systems, community compensation, forest restoration, and scientific monitoring. In other words, the cost of development should include the cost of protecting the ecosystem it affects. Step 6. Give local communities a direct financial stake. This may be more important step. If conservation generates tourism revenue, local communities should visibly benefit. More guides, more homestays, more local transport, more handicraft markets, more conservation employment, more payments for protecting wildlife corridors, because the strongest conservation guard may not always be a forest officer. Sometimes it is the local resident who thinks, if this forest survives, my family benefits too. And this is where I think India's conservation policy needs to evolve. We traditionally think in terms of national park, buffer zone, everything else. But wildlife doesn't live according to that three-layer model. We need to think in terms of core, corridors, plus communities. Core protects animals, corridors allow animals to move, and communities make conservation socially sustainable. Remove any of these and the system becomes fragile. A perfect national park surrounded by fragmented habitat is vulnerable. A beautiful corridor without community support is vulnerable. And a conservation policy that ignores local economic needs is politically vulnerable. So perhaps the future isn't how large should Kaziranga ESZ be, it is that how large is Kaziranga's functional ecosystem? That is completely different question. So, should Kaziranga have a 10-kilometer ESZ or 1 kilometer? My answer to this is neither number should become the goal. The goal should be to protect every piece of landscape that is genuinely necessary for Kaziranga ecological survival, while allowing people to live, work, and develop in areas where the ecological cost is manageable. Because there is a dangerous misconception in environmental debates. We think conservation means drawing line between around the nature, but nature doesn't stop at that line. A rhino doesn't know where the park ends. An elephant doesn't know where an ESZ begins. A flood doesn't know where a district boundary lies. And climate change certainly doesn't respect any of them. The future of Kaziranga will therefore not be decided only inside Kaziranga, it will be decided on the roads around it, in the towns around it, and the hills beyond it, in the corridors between habitats, and in the choices we make about where development should and should not go. So maybe the debate shouldn't be 10-kilometer versus 1 kilometer. Maybe it should be, can we build a human landscape around Kaziranga that wildlife can still survive in? If the answer is yes, then conservation and development don't have to be enemies. But if the answer is no, even a 10-kilometer line on a map won't save Kaziranga.